I want to welcome you to this Empowerment Mentoring phone call. Today is March 9th, 2017, and today I want to talk about something that I think we're all familiar with, and that's just how comfortable is the comfort zone. It might be comfortable, but it's a bad spot. It really is. The comfort zone is far and away the single biggest dream killer of modern day life. As we look at this, the context I want to place around it is specifically on results. And as a test, to bring everything back to our results, the question I think we need to ask ourselves is, and how's that working for you? Just that question, and how's that working for you? It's a great question, isn't it? And how's that working for you? See, we can all spin a good story, but that question cuts through our story, right to the truth of it, our results. Because our results don't lie. Andrew Carnegie said, as I grow older, I pay less attention to what people say and more attention to what they do. Because actions lead to results, don't they? Talk is cheap, but getting busy is what separates the winners from the rest. So our results is the name of the game. We all want to be happier, healthier, and wealthier, don't we? We all want to change the results we're getting in some area of our life. Now, this is going to be different for everyone else, for everyone. It's all going to be different. For some, it could be money. For others, it could be our relationships. Or for some, it's the health of our physical body. It could be spiritual development. Whatever it may be, I think most people would agree we all have areas in our life that we would like to get better results in, don't we? So why don't we get better results then, if that's what we want? And you know, it's an interesting thing, but when many of us look at our results, we tend to see our results as a reflection of our potential. And that seems like a natural thing to do. We look at what we are currently achieving and we accept, consciously or unconsciously, that those results reflect not just what we are currently achieving, but all that we are ever capable of achieving. After all, we're not stupid. If we were able of achieving more, surely we'd be doing it, wouldn't we? And this would appear to be the obvious answer. But do you know that the obvious answers are often the wrong answers? They're often not the right ones. And if you think about that for a moment, that would appear to make sense. Because the obvious answers tend to be the answers that most people come up with. And most people, by definition, are getting normal results. They're getting average results. And this is probably not the results that we dream of for ourselves. So if we find ourselves slipping into that thinking trap, I think we have to ask ourselves, and how's that working for me? Now, think about it for yourself now. What sort of life would you really like? How many people do you know living like that? Living that particular dream that you would really like? I think the odds are good that we want something more than the average person on the street is getting. Earl Nightingale said that most people tend to order their steaks medium and live their lives the same way. John Maxwell, he quotes a story in his book, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. I can't remember exactly the way it goes, but it's something like a guy goes into a fortune teller, and he asks for his fortune to be told. And he says, the fortune teller tells the guy, you'll be poor and miserable until you're 45. And then the guy asks, and then what happens? And the fortune teller tells him, then you'll get used to it. Oh my gosh, I mean, what a horrible, depressing thought when it's presented like that. But when it creeps up on you over years, it doesn't seem so strange. Gradually, we may accept mediocrity and then switch our dreams and hopes onto our children. It's like it's too late for us, but maybe they can get it right. Now, think about it. Hasn't your mother said to you, you're young, you've got the rest of your life ahead of you. Well, who doesn't? I mean, every single one of us still has the rest of our lives ahead of us. It's never too late to decide that we're not settling, that it's time for a growth spurt. I was listening to a health CD a little while ago, and on the CD, the guy was talking about some research relating to poisons in our food, and he said that small amounts of poisons are sometimes more dangerous than those larger amounts, because the body can pick up on the large amounts and process them. But small amounts sneak under the radar. They go unnoticed and build up over time, causing big problems. I heard an example once of, perhaps many of you have heard the same story about boiling a frog. You pick up a frog and say you drop the frog in hot water and he'll jump right out. He's a wise frog. But if you put the frog in cold water and you heat it up slowly and the gradual changes in temperatures are accepted, so that over time the same big change is experienced, but if it's gradual, the frog accepts it and doesn't move. Apparently, now obviously I've never tried this and I really hope no one on the line has either, but apparently the water can be heated up slowly to boiling and the frog will accept it up to his death. So how often do we do this in our lives? Think about the things we put up with because they've gradually grown to be like that, and we've gotten used to them. They're familiar to us. We've even become comfortable in it. Relationships, finances, health, all kinds of dreams gradually eroded till there's practically nothing left. How's that working for us? If we were starting afresh, we'd never tolerate it. But having grown used to it, we barely even notice it now. And this applies to all areas of our life, to a lot of people, most people. And when we think about our results in these different key areas of life, it's a sad fact that the majority of people are going the wrong way, and they always have. They take their lead from those around them. They take comfort in being part of the crowd and copying their actions and seeking their opinions and following their advice. And ultimately, therefore, they're just getting pretty much the same results as everybody else. Now, Earl Nightingale, he referred to this as the self-defeating cycle of the poor. That is, asking people who are getting the same results as us what they think we should do. Now, when we stop and think about it, it doesn't make sense, does it? So the problem is we never do stop and think about it. Surely it makes sense to seek the opinion of someone who has demonstrated that their results, that they know what they're talking about. But who do we ask? There's that ancient wisdom that says, by their fruits you'll know them. But if someone is not getting the results we want, why on earth would we ask their advice or pay any attention to their opinions? They're going to lead us in the same direction that they're going, and it likely isn't in the direction of our goals and what we want for our lives. I've done this for years, and I'm sure many of you have too, where we might ask someone that we like what to do in a situation, in an area where they too are getting, say, terrible results. It doesn't make sense, does it? But I did it because their answers were comfortable to me. They were what I wanted to hear. It's convenient too. It's convenient, it's comfortable, it's familiar to ask the people around us for help when we need it, because the people, the things, the circumstances that we are surrounded by are all part of our comfort zone. We know where we are when we're in the comfort zone. It's familiar, and we don't need to think too much. Unfortunately, though, settling for the comfort zone means, now listen to this. This is depressing. But settling for the comfort zone means that we are today all that we are ever going to be. Now, I don't know about you, but I find that quite a disturbing thought. When we stop stretching, reaching, seeking, and risking, we actually stop growing. And if we're not growing, then we're shrinking. It doesn't seem to matter what level you're in life. You could be 18 years old or 75 years old. You could be a student in college. You could be a professional. You could be retired. We all get stuck at times, don't we? But we do move on. Or do we languish there? Do we just stay there? You see, in our comfort zone, almost all of our actions are driven by habit. And habits are actions that express themselves without any conscious awareness. When we're acting habitually, our conscious mind is free to think of something else. Now, those of you who drive a car will be able to relate to this example. Say you're in your car driving along at 70 miles an hour and you're steering with your knees while you dial someone on your mobile phone. And you're thinking about what you're going to say when you get through. Well, if you're thinking about what you're going to say, then you're not thinking about driving the car. So who's driving the car? Well, obviously you are, but you're driving the car through actions that you've delegated to habit years ago. Habits are extremely useful, but they're non-adaptive. In a recent article I read, the author put it beautifully when he said, "Our habits have an IQ of 0. They have no intelligence. They do what they've been programmed to do. They are learned behaviors or routines." Now, I said they're extremely useful, but habitual behaviors perform as they were set up to perform, not necessarily in the way that best suits the current situation. So various studies, they place estimates on the amount of our daily actions that are habitual at around 80 or 90%. That is almost all of what we do. We don't even think about it. Now just think about that. I know you know this, but think about it with me. Almost everything we do, we don't think about. We're on autopilot. So habits are one of the two key things that keep us penned in our comfort zone. They keep us doing the same things, and so they keep us getting the same things. But we're comfortable living by habit because it means we don't need to think. And thinking is hard work. We don't need to make too many new decisions in the comfort zone. We don't perceive any real risks. And not taking any risks appeals to us. Now maybe you've heard this quote before, that most people tiptoe through life hoping to make it safely to death. But we can't get away from risk. There's risks in everything, especially to the comfort zone. JFK said there are risks and costs to a plan of action, but these are far less than the long-range risks and costs of comfortable inaction. Like a man in a boat, casually watching the passing scenery as he floats blissfully unaware towards the waterfall. Rowing upstream is hard work. Floating downstream is comfortable. But for how long? Maybe there are more risks to the comfort zone than meet the eye. The comfort zone might be comfortable, but man, it's a bad, bad spot. Every single one of us is floating down our own stream in some areas of our life. When are we going to set out for where we really want to go? Where is your boat floating as you casually are watching the passing scenery? We may not know exactly where we're floating to, but we do know this, that water only ever flows in one direction, and it's not up. So we're coasting. We're coasting downwards. If things aren't good now, then they won't get better by accident. And I heard someone once say, you know if you're on the right road because it's uphill. I think many of us are much like that man in the boat, except even worse than enjoying the passing scenery. A good portion of us are pretty busy pointing out all the weeds and complaining about the other boats charging in the opposite direction, or they're on a mission. We're still drifting towards that waterfall, but complaining all the way to anyone who will listen? Do you know anyone like that? Now, many of you will have heard of Abraham Maslow, and he has this famous theory called the hierarchy of needs. Well, he came to the conclusion that we all have infinite potential, and that means that from where we are today, wherever that may be, but from where we are today, we can keep growing in any direction that we want to grow, and that we can keep growing for the rest of our lives. Every day we can become more than we were yesterday. Through, as Thomas Troward said, an orderly sequence of growth. I love that expression, an orderly sequence of growth. Not by magic, not by luck, not overnight, but through an orderly sequence of growth. Now, whether you accept that we all have infinite potential or not, that's not necessarily that important right away, but the more we think about these things, the more we come to the conclusion that it's not what we can do that is important. It's what we will do, what we are willing to do. What we can do is hypothetical. What we will do is what is important. So whatever our potential is, we only use a fraction of it. There is plenty more for us to cultivate. The bottom line, though, is this. In order to grow, we must get out of our comfort zone, because growth occurs outside the comfort zone, not in it. It's weathering the discomfort that is responsible for the growth. You've heard the expression, strong timber does not grow easy. Calm seas never made a great sailor. Well, it's battling against and overcoming something that leads to the growth. And growth is good. So struggle, confusion, pain, discomfort, fear, man, these are all signs that we are growing. And so they're good signs. So we should welcome them, not avoid them. In fact, if we want to grow quickly, we should actively seek them out. Get uncomfortable on a regular basis. Man, that sounds strange, but it's exactly what we need to do. What have you done today that is unfamiliar, inconvenient, and uncomfortable? So one of the two things that keeps us stuck in the comfort zone is habit. And we've got to get into the habit of getting out of our habit. But the second key thing that keeps us stuck is even more insidious, and that is belief. Beliefs and habits keep us penned up in the status quo. But though they both only really exist in one place, and a place within our control, inside our minds. To illustrate this point, let me give you an example. So I was coaching somebody recently, and they were telling me that their dream was to have a house in the country. The only problem was she said she didn't have the money, but she quickly added that she was committed to getting it. So I asked her, how was she going to get the money? And she said, well, she didn't know because she tried everything. Well, we then went on to explore what that everything meant and looked at a couple of options. She explained that she couldn't get any more money in her current job, and I asked her to consider that whether that statement was right or wrong, that it was something that she believed. And she agreed that, yes, it was something that she believed, and she also knew it was correct. I then asked her what her thoughts were on setting up multiple sources of income, and she explained that she only had 2, maybe 3 hours a week of spare time, so she couldn't really do anything else. I asked her to consider that was that a belief that she held, and she agreed that it was, although she looked at me like I was a bit of a goofball. But we've all got our own story. It's so convincing to us, and that's part of the illusion. So anyway, I went on and I suggested that there were people doing that what she was doing, earning probably twice as much money as she was. And she agreed that, okay, probably there were. And I said, so why do you think that is? And she said that they were much more intelligent than she was. And I asked her again to consider, was that a belief that she held? Now, she was now getting probably a little unsettled with me and even slightly irritated by my responses, and she replied that of course it was a belief because it was true. Now, most people have difficulty distinguishing what they believe with reality. I suggested that the people in her field who were earning more may not necessarily be more intelligent than her, but maybe they were providing more service, maybe through specialized knowledge, maybe becoming indispensable, cultivating key relationships or focusing on key result areas, maybe by managing a team of people like her or doing what she was currently doing. And she quickly replied that she couldn't do management because she doesn't like dealing with people. And I looked at her, and then she said, I know. That's a belief. We then spent some time evaluating each of these beliefs to see if they actually held water. To see, like habits, our beliefs are stored in our subconscious mind. This means that by definition, they are below our level of consciousness. That means that we are not necessarily aware of what we believe until we or maybe a good coach, counselor, starts questioning our beliefs. See, questions are a great way of digging into the subconscious mind to find out what we really believe. Now, our belief system is based upon our evaluation of something, and the more we reevaluate our beliefs, the more likely they are to change. Beliefs that hold us back from moving in the direction that we would like to go in these are called self-limiting beliefs or unhealthy beliefs. I love Dr. Albert Ellis's work on rational emotive behavioral therapy, also known as REBT. It's useful in really understanding about the nature of beliefs and healthy and unhealthy beliefs. We'll come back to beliefs in more detail, but for now, I think it's useful to consider their role with regard to our comfort zone. And like the lady in the example I just gave, a big part of our problem is in assuming that our beliefs reflect a single reality, rather than seeing them simply as the result of a learning process. So here's a good example of how comically wrong they can be. Did you know that the first thing that a duck sees when it comes out of its egg, it considers to be its mother? Now, it could be a dog or a cat or a human, but whatever it first sees is mom. Now, this process serves the duck well, probably 99.9% of the time, but you can see the limitations in the process. It's called imprinting. It's a process that leads to an unshakable belief in that little duck. Now, if the duck stopped and reflected and asked himself, how's that working for me? He may conclude he's perfectly happy with his results. So why change the belief, even though the dog is not its mother? So, well, our beliefs are slightly more complicated in their formation, but they are just as fallible. They can be just as comical. You see, our beliefs are the result of a learning process, not necessarily a reflection of reality. And it's the beliefs that we hold that tend to keep us conveniently tucked in our comfort zone. Now, we can't examine everything we believe, and really there's no need to do that. But we do need to examine certain beliefs that are stopping us from moving forward towards our goals. For example, if I want to be let's say I want to be a stand-up comedian, but I believe that I'm genetically shy and I can't do public speaking, that belief is probably going to stand in my way more than anything else. So if I'm serious about being a comic, then sensibly, that's probably the first thing I need to examine and ask myself, how's that working for me? Is it logical? Is it based in reality? And is it helping me? And if not, that belief may just have to go. There's a process to change, just like a process to acquiring beliefs in the first place. It takes decision, commitment, a goal or reason to change, an understanding of the obstacles that will be faced on the way, a strategy to step through the terror barriers. These are the things that I communicate with those of you who've worked with me before in regards to values. You identify what matters to you most, you identify what your values are, and people are willing to say, bring it on. I am willing to go through the stuff that is tough, all in the service of what matters most to me. And when you do that, you begin to notice a shift in attitude, and there's a system to successful change. Now, this is more difficult than it sounds, and typically we've found that the people generally need some good information or a good coach or a good counselor to help them with this process, or ideally, all of it. A third-party perspective can really help. So how many times have you looked at somebody else's life and seen all the problems or things that they need to change? It's so obvious in somebody else. But it's much more difficult to see it in ourselves, because much of what we do is habitual. It's unconscious. It's below our level of consciousness. So someone looking in can more easily identify those things that are holding us back. And it's not just with regard to our life that say, a good coach can fast-track our success. Think of sports. Now, I remember when I used to play tennis as a kid. I was active on my high school tennis team, and I played tennis all through the summer months as a kid, and was really involved in tennis, and I really valued the information that I got from my coaches, and I can remember a time where my coach pointed out to me just a couple things that I could change that were really holding me back. Sometimes it was just changing some bad habits, like how I didn't square up my hips or the position of my feet that they were in. And once I just made this tiny little change, man, we were moving off in a whole new direction. I was skiing recently, and I was skiing with this friend who was running around as we were trying to get ready to go out on the slopes, and he's running around looking for his goggles. Now, he was getting really annoyed and frustrated, and honestly, I couldn't take him very seriously because I thought for sure he knew that the goggles were just sitting on his helmet on top of his head. Everyone else could see the obvious, but apart from him. And just the other day, I kid you not, I was on my cell phone with a friend, and I was talking with him about scheduling something, and so I needed to look it up on my calendar, and I couldn't find my phone. I was getting annoyed, and I even said, "Where the heck is my phone? I can't find my phone." And so the voice on the other end says, "Doug, isn't the phone in your hand, and aren't you talking into it right now?" I mean, oh my gosh, how embarrassing. And I hope I'm not the only one who's ever experienced something like that. But my point is, it's like the tip of your nose. I can't see mine, but I can see yours, and you can see mine. So anyway, as I said, formation of beliefs is part of our learning process. We are pretty much, all of us, the product of our environment. We've learned to fit in with our environment. Think of language. We learn the language or languages that are going on around us to fit into our environment. If we put a child in an English-speaking home, what language is she going to learn? Put the same child in a German-speaking home, what language is she going to learn? Kids, soak it up. If the same child was put into a wealthy home, what habits and beliefs will they likely acquire? Just soaking it up. My youngest son, he's adopted from Africa, and today actually is his gotcha day. He was 3, turning 4 years old when we brought him home to Colorado. And at that time, he could speak 3 languages. He could speak Swahili, Lingala, and French. And man, he could speak it in this just gorgeous, beautiful French accent. He could not speak English at all. And just in 6 months, just in a 6-month short period of time, this little guy soaked up the language and was speaking English fluently. Unfortunately, he lost that adorable French accent, and now he sounds like the rest of us in my family. But nearly all welfare recipients are 2nd, 3rd, 4th generation welfare recipients. Now, why do you suppose that is? Well, that's the environment they grew up in. They go to the same places. They read the same things. They talk to the same people. They do the same things. And so the most natural thing in the world for someone growing up in that environment is to fit right in. Now, this makes me think of an interesting study that I learned about not long ago. It was a study about these researchers. They took 4 monkeys and they placed them in a room that had a tree in the middle of it. Now, at the top of the tree was a beautiful bunch of tasty bananas. Now, one of the monkeys, probably the more dominant monkey, takes the lead there and starts to climb up to the top of the tree to reach the bananas. And as that monkey got closer to the bananas, this poor monkey is just doused with a massive stream of cold water spraying from something like a fire hose. You just picture this massive dose of water just spraying this monkey, and this powerful torrent of spray of cold water is just dousing him, and he scurries down the tree away from the cold water, never to reach the bananas. So a little while later, another monkey, he starts climbing the tree to get to the bananas, and just like the first monkey, it too is doused with a powerful stream of cold water, and that monkey scurries down the tree. So all 4 monkeys, they're making these attempts to climb up the tree. They get sprayed, and they scurry down the tree. And after a while, the monkeys stopped trying to climb the tree. Then the real interesting thing happens. Like, the researchers remove one of the original monkeys, and they put in a new monkey. And this new monkey comes into the room and sees the bananas on top of the tree and starts to climb the tree. And as this monkey starts to climb the tree, the other 3 monkeys grab it and pull it down, preventing it from climbing the tree. And now I'm sure they're thinking they might be protecting that monkey from getting hurt or protecting the monkey from getting sprayed. Well, the researchers continued to remove one monkey of the original monkeys and place it with a new monkey. And each time a new monkey came into the room and tried to climb the tree, the other monkeys would prevent it from climbing down the tree or climbing up the tree. They would get in the way and pull it down. Now, I assume that those new monkeys have no idea why they're getting pulled down, but stays there with the others and doesn't climb the tree and starts to acquire that behavior of pulling down new monkeys. And so eventually, the room now has 4 completely new monkeys. Not a single monkey from the original group is in the room. And if a monkey tries to climb the tree, all the others pull it down to keep it from climbing the tree. It appears that the monkeys don't know why, but it's just part of the behavior that they acquired from the environment that they're in. And so they pull down the others, keeping them down and from ever reaching that beautiful bunch of tasty bananas at the top. Now, part of the process of fitting in is the accumulation of beliefs. So like the duck or like the monkeys who they never really experienced getting sprayed, but they still didn't climb the tree. They acquired this through this learning process. And all of this information that is programmed into our subconscious minds, we refer to as our paradigm. Now, we may not have been responsible for that creation of our paradigm, but understand this, and this is probably the most important thing that I want to say today, that we are not responsible for acquiring our paradigm. We are not responsible for acquiring that, but it is our responsibility to change it. If we want something different to come, if we want something different than what we've been getting, then it's our responsibility to change our paradigm. No one is going to do that for us. If we are going to change, then we need to accept full responsibility for changing our paradigm. Now, I said that what we believe is the result of a learning process. And so we can learn new beliefs through a similar process. And some of you are probably thinking, well, why would I want to change what I believe? Well, because we tend to assume that what we believe is a reflection of reality. But it really isn't. It's the result of a learning process and the creator of our reality. And there is such an enormous difference between the two. I remember speaking to a large group a while ago, and I was standing there in front of this large group, and there was somebody sitting in the front row who fell asleep. That person's mouth was open, they're leaning over, they got those deep, loud breaths of just being in a deep sleep, drooling down their face, the whole thing. And there's a difference between observing that event and interpreting that event, and evaluating that event and making a personalized conclusion to observing that event. Now, what do I mean? Well, this woman, she might have gotten maybe a couple hours of sleep last night taking care of her sick spouse. But if I conclude that the only reason she fell asleep was because I'm a poor speaker, I'm going well beyond the available information. And if it was an emotional experience, if I tied a lot of emotion to it, that holds even more danger for me. So beliefs are formed through repetition, doing it again and again, and emotion. And the more emotion, the more powerful the belief, the more power it holds over us. And we all believe millions of things that we're not necessarily consciously aware of. And these things can stop us from moving in the direction that we want to go. The question is, how many times have we gone beyond the available information? How many times have we made incorrect assumptions? I'm no good at math. I could never learn that new skill. I can't juggle 100 times. It takes money to make money. True leaders are born that way. I wasn't born that way. I could never be good at sales. I don't have a gift to talk in front of people. All men are just, and you fill in the blanks. We have all sorts of beliefs that we carry around. And the startling thing is, beliefs then appear to be self-evident. Because we adopt these beliefs, they become true for us. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Experiences can be incredibly useful for learning. If we reflect, look for insight, learn and grow, incorporate our growth in our next experience, and I think we should do this whether we see someone asleep in the front row or not. Habits have such a key role in our life, and the beliefs have such a powerful role in our lives, affecting what we notice in the first place, how we then interpret what we notice, what we expect, what we do, and then how we explain to ourselves the results of what we do. And then as a sort of self-preservation mechanism, our confirmation bias tends to ignore everything that doesn't support the belief and highlight everything that reinforces it. I'm trying to juggle 100 times. Well, I only got to 20. See, it's right. I can't do it. Thereby practically guaranteeing its existence from then on. So if our beliefs and habits are responsible to such an extent for the results that we get in life, then surely it makes sense to cultivate habits that are going to take us in the direction we want to go, and to adopt beliefs that enable us to believe that we are going to get there. If the results we get in our lives are consistent with our comfort zone, and we don't like the results that we're getting, then it's time for a new comfort zone. But doing so is risky. So here you are. You've been able to acknowledge that there's something you long for, something that you really want to make happen in your life, maybe professionally or personally. And as you get in touch with that, a lot of fear comes up for you. There are a lot of thoughts about whether you should put yourself out there. And then thoughts like, what if I get hurt? What if things don't work out? This would be a little like you, say, standing up on a high cliff overlooking a narrow, deep canyon. You can see something you really want on the other side of that canyon. You can see a place where you could really live, where you would be achieving something that really matters to you. And you can see that there's a way to get to the other side of the canyon, but it's an old rope bridge right there in front of you. And as you look at it, you aren't sure the bridge is totally safe. Maybe there are a few planks missing. Maybe it looks a bit worn. But you also aren't sure that it definitely isn't safe. And there on the other side is that place where you really want to be. If this really were the situation, what choices would you have? Well, maybe, some of you might have some come to mind that might be similar to this or might be different, but I could decide that the bridge isn't safe, and therefore I am unwilling to take the risk of stepping on it. And in that case, it's clear that there isn't going to be any movement towards what I want. I'm staying put. Alternatively, I could decide to just go for it and run across the bridge, hoping that I'll get to the other side. That move might work, yet there's also the possibility that the bridge isn't safe and I will fall. Another option is to move cautiously. For example, putting one foot on the bridge to test it while maybe keeping another foot on solid ground. However, I couldn't go out very far before I knew that I would have to take my foot off the solid ground to keep moving forward. I would soon learn that it isn't possible to find out if the bridge is safe or not while standing still. I have to keep moving and eventually step off solid ground. To kind of drive this home a little bit, sometimes I reflect on my experiences as a kid, and I was attending a summer camp at the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs as a boy, and in the evening of that camp, we always had free time to go swimming And at the Air Force Academy, they have this beautiful swimming pool complex, and there's all these diving boards and these high dives. And the boys at the camp, they all decided, let's go jump off the highest high dive. And I stood there and I watched some of these boys. They climb up that ladder all the way up to the very top. And some of these guys, man, they would jump off that platform and just have a killer jump. They would look so cool and just had fun, and people were cheering for them. And then there were some boys that would get up there and maybe just something happened while they're in the air. And man, they just go, boom, belly flop. A lot of pain happening there when you have a belly flop from that high. Some boys would get up there and I don't know, they're doing something, people are laughing at them, making fun of them, and just I feel kind of bad for them because people are making fun of them. It looked humiliating. Well, so it's my turn to climb to the top of that high dive, and I climb that ladder, and I get to the edge of the platform, and I'm standing there, and man, I start thinking like, okay, 1, I'm going to jump on 3. 1, 2, no, wait a minute. What if I get hurt? Man, what if I have a belly flop? I don't want to have a belly flop. All right, okay, here I go. On the count of 3, I'm going 1, 2, but geez, man, what if people are laughing at me and I'm looking stupid and they're all making fun of me? I just couldn't handle that. And all right, and I'm going back and forth. Should I jump? Should I not? I'm struggling here. Finally, after several minutes, I just say, forget it. And I eventually decide I'm not going to jump. I tell everybody to get out of my way, and I walk down that ladder to the bottom. And then I found myself. I'm just standing there. I'm standing there alone. While I watched all these boys, some of the boys that had a great jump, some of them that got hurt, some of them that maybe looked like goofballs or whatever, and man, they're all high-fiving one another. They're getting to know one another. They're connecting. And I stood there and felt sorry for myself because I couldn't jump. Well, let me rephrase that. Because I chose not to jump. I had the belief that I couldn't do it. And so I chose not to. Now, if I jumped, I could have had a great jump. I also could have gotten hurt. I could have had a great experience. I could have looked silly and had everybody laughing at me. I mean, I'll never know because I didn't take the risk. But what I have learned since then is that by taking the risk, I would have likely learned something about myself that I didn't already know. And man, if I got hurt, if I failed, I would have learned something. But instead, I didn't learn anything, and even found myself homesick and not connecting with others. And man, that's what I wanted to do so much, and I never did. So here's say a short formula for success. Here it is. Get out of your comfort zone. Take a risk and jump out of your comfort zone and into your growth zone. And stay there till you get comfortable again. Then repeat it. And keep on repeating. Keep on growing into a bigger and better and more capable and more productive you. And this never stops as long as you choose to keep doing it. And we all can grow. And just a final thought. What is the secret of happiness? John Maxwell summed it up as growth. Growth is the secret to happiness. Earl Nightingale said, happiness is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Happiness is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. I think that's growth. Margaret Thatcher said, when you look back at the days you've been really happy, they're not the days when you sit in front of the TV. They're the days when you had everything to do and you did it. So folks, thanks for joining me on this call. And just one final thought here is the comfort zone may appear to be comfortable in the short term, but in the long term, how's it working for you?
Thank you so much for that, Doug. I have a list of questions here that I would like to ask, but we also want to start a question and answer portion of the call for everyone who's on. And this is really simple. If you have any questions, all you're going to need to do on your phone is press *6. That will unmute you, and then you can just ask your question. So we're going to give a little time right now for anyone who has questions to ask about Dr. Miller.
Lauren, you said you had some that showed up there, or
yes.
what?
Well, the first one What are some starting questions that we can ask to reveal beliefs about ourselves that we might not know we have? So I'm thinking if you have a client in your office that you're kind of working through this with, where do you start with them? What are some things you have them ask themselves, or what are some questions you ask them that that brings about some revelation regarding that?
Sometimes I might tap into what they're feeling when they have that belief, and then I'd say, when was the last time you felt this way? And we can tie that belief to an experience that they had. And so we can see how that learning experience that they had in the past has contributed to a belief. Mm-hmm. And then once we can identify what that belief is, I start asking those questions of, can you provide me some proof? Is this logical? Does this build you up or tear you down? Is this helping you move in the direction that you want to go? But usually if we can tie a certain belief to an experience, we can see how that one particular experience has contributed to that thought or belief.
That's good. A second question I had, are habits always a sign that we need to pursue growth, or is it ever possible to get to the point where most of our habits are good ones that at one point came about through growth? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but although I've sat with people who will be intentional on breaking their habits and going into their growth zone, and then they are there for a while, and then that becomes a habit, and then they're experiencing some unhappiness. And so that's why you have to intentionally choose, and that's that word I like to use, is intentionally choose now to keep growing by stepping out of your comfort zone again, because even your growth zone can become a comfort zone by habit, which then isn't serving you. And so you have to then intentionally choose to step out again and keep moving.
So we're really never going to reach a point where we're comfortable all the time, is what you're saying.
If you could do that intentionally, seek ways to be uncomfortable, then you will be continuously growing.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and close this session out. I'd like to give some information for those of you who are still on the call. If there are questions you think of later, or if you debrief with your group and you have some things you'd like Dr. Miller to address, you can email me those and I can get those to him. My email address is Lauren, Lauren, at summitpsychology.net. I'd also like to announce our next conference call. Mark your calendars for Thursday, April 6th at 8:30 a.m. And we will be sending out an email prior to the call with a reminder of the date and time, as well as with the information you'll need to join the conference. And if you aren't on our contact list but you want to get updates on future calls and opportunities, shoot me an email at that same email address I just said. It's lauren@summitpsychology.net, and I'll add you to our email update group. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning and participating in the call, and you're free to disconnect. Have a great day.